For me, it's a daily conversation to make sure that I don't put validation, achievement, outcome before how I feel. Oh God, I mean, loneliness was pretty much how I have felt for as long as I can remember. Even though time has changed, we've aged, a lot of us have left those early environments. What hasn't left us are those habits wired into our body that are becoming activated somewhere later in life and contributing to what feels like, right, those patterns that we just can't choose.
In America, people often say, help yourself. But what about heal yourself? Welcome to Stars About Stars podcast, where instead of discussing red carpets, we do have open, heart-to-heart conversations with well-known personalities, and we actually find out what stands in reality behind the scenes of glory and success. I'd like to remind you that every episode is inspired by great biography and Gemini Name Me Up, your emotional intelligence platform. Today, we've joined by someone who transformed the life of millions of people and actually changed the global, worldwide conversation about self-healing, self-acceptance, and self-understanding, emotional awareness, and personal responsibility about your own life. Through her work, millions of people have begun a journey back to themselves. Let's welcome psychologist, best-selling author, and creator of more than 70 workshops and the leader of Self-Healers Movement, Dr. Nicole LePera. Hello,
Iryna, thank
Nicole.
you for having me so much.
It's such a pleasure to talk to you and knowing your schedule, how busy you are. Actually, I tell you, I've been preparing your questions endlessly because your biography and your reading was so fascinating. You know that it's not a regular interview. Every time I dived into your numbers, I said, I want to ask this and I want to ask that. And it was an endless process. I had to stop myself.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here, and already your introduction. Thank you. I'm just so gracious.
Thank you. Dr. Nicole, the very first question is, you were born in September 15, 1982 in Philadelphia. Is it correct?
That is correct.
Beautiful. So now we can truly start. We all came from childhood, and I know that people don't choose helping profession for no reason. Your karmic task or North Node through astrology is placed in Cancer. That suggests that one of your greatest life lessons is understanding the true value of family, parents, and children. Was your personal reason to choose a helping profession related to some of mentioned above?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, it as my stars kind of indicate, it was such an intuitive choice. I can't remember a time whenever children or teens are beginning, to hear the question of what are you going to be when you grow up? My answer near instinctually was always, I want to be a psychologist. And it came from, as long as I can remember, a fascination, a curiosity, maybe a very deep rooted desire to try to understand other people. And I think for a lot of us, right, that desire comes from, for me, while I didn't have the language at the time as a child, right, a desire to understand myself. Why am I who I am? What makes me me and someone else them? So for me, it was like this kind of inner desire to not only gain understanding for myself, but to then be able to gift that understanding to others to help them relieve suffering on their journeys.
You know, I think when people are interested in their calling, you always have to recall actually your childhood because your passion could be converted into your big hobby or your profession for life. On your podcast, you speak through your books, through your seminars, a lot about attachment issues, which you consider to be the root challenge for self-understanding. How did you start your return journey to self?
So for me, and again, while I now understand kind of the limitations of my earliest attachment in my core family home with my parents. I came from a home where I had both a present mother and a father physically, though emotionally, they really lacked the ability to be emotionally attuned. So I speak to this often, right? We learn about ourselves, how to relate to others, who we need to be to maintain connections, because connections are such a part of our human experience. So while I wouldn't have known the lack of emotional connection that I needed really shaped how I operated in the world, that's exactly what happened. When I became when I did not feel that I had safety to be myself, I did what a lot of us do. I began to scan my environment, look for any cues, any shifts or changes in someone's body tone, or I should say body posture or tone or mood, to give me an indication on how I had to be myself. And that's what I teach, because we all have that tendency and the desire, the drive, I should say, to adapt in childhood. Then we become very familiar with a certain way of being, especially in our relationships. And then we become very habitual, right, at how we try to relate to others, connect, get those needs met. Though it took me well into my 30s, because I'd always been in a relationship. So it wasn't that I lacked relationships, so to speak, though what I always carried with me, and this was very much the experience that I had in childhood, which was I didn't feel the emotional connection. So while I had people that I was friends with and romantic partners that I was in relationship with, I always felt deeply, deeply alone, very much how I felt in childhood. And it took me to understand, again, all of the ways our body adapts, to then stop pointing the finger to someone else and just trying to look for a partner where I would feel more connected and begin to see the role that I was playing, which was being disconnected myself.
We are all dual personalities. We have our masculine and our feminine part. Do you think being a child, you had proper expectations what we should receive from your mother and from your father?
I think that the expectations are very much um, impacted by our parents' own lived experiences. And I think things like, gender and expectations and ways of being in the world, I think culturally, over time, different generations, that has changed. Society gives us different messages, put us that way, and our family homes also then give us different messages. And I'm sharing that because I was raised with parents who were of a generation where there was not really much talk of emotions, nurturing, kind of more of the feminine aspect. So it wasn't necessarily that my mom wasn't, neither of my parents, because in their childhood homes, generationally, there wasn't an understanding of how important emotions and emotional attunement were. So the simple answer is I was modeled from my parents exactly what they were modeled, which in my opinion left out big parts of the human experience, whether it's the more feminine, right? How do I be in my vulnerable emotional energy, to even how do I properly assert my more masculine energy without going into something that's more aggressive or shutting down and not asserting myself at all. So as far as I'm concerned, I didn't fully get healthy modeling of either of those energies, whether we want to attach it to a gendered body or not. Because again, my parents were repeating exactly what they themselves learned in their own childhood experiences.
It's amazing how ancestral generational DNA does influence us and our behaviors and patterns and cycles. And now, actually, I'm reading your beautiful book, Reparenting Your Inner Child, which is so beautiful. And it's dedicated to little Nicole that was already in. I love the title. I love the subtitle and dedication itself. Why do you think people can't stop unconsciously please their parents?
So we are learning throughout life. And a lot of the learning that we're doing in our early childhood, and this is what I talk about around this concept of inner child, right? This early kind of space in life where we're completely dependent on other people, where we ourselves, we don't have language, right? We don't have maturity, awareness, like things that we develop in adulthood, but we're still learning. We're very attuned to the environment and we're taking in both direct and indirect messaging. And so what we're learning is our body is learning, in particular, reactions. Again, because before language, everything that we experienced about ourselves and the world around us was felt through our body as sensations and as survival driven responses. And so what happens then over time, the more consistently certain experiences happen to us and we respond in consistent ways, the more we become very habitual. And I'm sure listeners have heard of the concept of autopilot, right? We kind of have these habits that it doesn't matter how much insight, awareness, how much we know that we want to break these habits because they're not serving us, yet we still, in those moments, right, our heart begins to race, our muscles begin to tense, and we find ourselves saying and doing the exact thing that we want to avoid and we've been committed to avoiding because, again, that's a perfect example of what's happening in those moments. Even though time has changed, we've aged, a lot of us have left those early environments. What hasn't left us are those habits wired into our body that are becoming activated somewhere later in life and contributing to what feels like, right, those patterns that we just can't choose.
When do you think in your life you accepted the fact that actually not every person has to become a parent themselves, especially when we have such a hard, endless work to take care of our inner child?
Well, for me, I mean, that was something that I've accepted as long as I can remember because I never intuitively desired or thought about, fantasized having a child. And so I think a little bit of that was modeled to me for a very long time. My sister, who was 15 years older than me when I was born. So she was 15 when I was just born. And for a very long time, she would talk very openly in the family about her decision that she too did not believe that she wanted to have a child. There was a running joke in the family that I was her child. She took a very active role parenting me, so to speak, when she was a teenager. So she, I think, modeled for me, and I share this because I do believe a lot of children in general, especially, right, female identified children, I do think society, right, does not model, put it this way, the decision to be child free. I had that very much in my home. And so for me, I was very clear that I did not know what my future would look like. I always knew that I wanted a partner, right, and a family in that way, so to speak. But I also knew at the same time that I didn't really have a desire to procreate myself or to necessarily have a child that I was involved in shaping their lived experience. So for me, it was always the case, right, that I was very clear on that, but I would never, right, project a decision that is aligned for me to other people. But as I've gotten really clear on what is needed to really prepare a child, all from the financial resources to the emotional resources, again, many of which that many of us lack because we weren't taught that in our childhood, because we weren't raised by parents who had the ability to calm themselves down. That I do think it's just a decision that some of us are making for other reasons, right? Because we think we should, because society tells us we should, because we think that a child is going to make us feel better about ourselves. And again, many different reasons why we might feel inspired, so to speak, to have a child. That's not necessarily because I want to give a unique individual a new life and allow them to create the life exactly as they want it to be for themselves, right? So there's many different reasons. So again, I just think parenting in and of itself is a huge responsibility. A lot is involved, from financial resources to emotional resources. And I do think, again, a lot of us make those decisions to have a child, maybe without the pause that would be helpful to determine if not only we're in a space, but if we really truly, right, what our reason is for wanting a child. Let me put it that way.
Sometimes people want children because they want to be loved unconditionally and they don't receive it somewhere else. And more I talk to people who are passionate about what they are doing in life, about their mission and calling, I see that's their baby. That's what they deliver to the planet. That's how contribute to the society. And you have a big mission, and we all know it. From the age 12 to 24, it goes under the energy of 6 and 9, which is described in numerology as a search for self, a process of letting go and at times loneliness. Is any significant event that happened to you during this period of time?
Oh, God. I mean, loneliness was pretty much how I have felt for as long as I can remember. And I think the time period that you're describing, did you say around 12? So I had my first romantic partner, a boyfriend, when I was 16 years old. And again, like I was sharing earlier, despite always kind of seemingly being surrounded by relationship, whether it was friendships, that I would spend a lot of my time with in especially high school age, college age, or partners, that feeling of loneliness was something that I couldn't shake. Even so much as far as spending the entirety of my 20s, I lived in New York City, right? The city that never sleeps, people all around. Quite literally, I was never alone, or I didn't have to be alone if I didn't choose to be. And I didn't choose to be alone quite ever. I always had my days scheduled. I knew plans. I was living with roommates or partners. So I never really was alone. Yet that feeling of loneliness I carried with me wherever I went. And again, it wasn't one moment. For me, what I thought it was for a very long time was, oh, I'm just picking the wrong people, right? I will find this magic person where that feeling will go away. And it took me entering into my 30s to see that I couldn't outrun that feeling. So then I began to look into the mirror, which is what I was describing earlier when I saw, oh, Nicole, that loneliness is actually something that originated in childhood. Similar scenario, right? A lot of people around, people in my home. I lived in a city, Philadelphia, much like smaller version of New York City with a lot of people outside. Yet again, that loneliness really came from that lack of emotional connection.
You know what's interesting about New York? When I had to look up your data, I think you're so much associated with New York that it was a doubt where you were born. I said, no, 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 that's a Philly girl. That's a Philly gift, you know, I came
That
from there. Yeah, so some sources are saying that you're from New York.
That's so funny. Yeah. I mean, I spent the entirety of my 20s in New York City. I felt very, for a long time, I would have thought I would still be living in a city that was very urban of that nature. I just love the accessibility, the people, the life. And it was until more recently, probably the past decade, where I started to now experience cities as being much more stressful, much more fast, too much. Whereas there was a time where it felt like it was exactly what I wanted and what I needed.
Around 20 years old, a transition to new beginning, some kind of inner shift. Did any special happen to you by that time?
When I was around 20, I would say that I was just kind of finishing up college, probably. I think I graduated college when I was 21. So those were the years. So I went to college in upstate New York. It was the first time I left a city environment. And I very quickly decided that that was not for me. I needed to quickly run back to the city as soon as I graduated. So I did just that. And again, for no particular reason did I land in New York City, outside of the fact that I had two good friends that I had, spent time with during my college years, both of whom had gotten a job themselves in New York. And I thought, oh, okay, I feel not really called to go anywhere else. So I might as well just go to New York too. So that really began my 20s. And I already knew at that time that I would be pursuing a PhD in psychology, or at least I had wanted to. Obviously, I knew New York City had a ton of really incredible graduate programs. So once I took the year off that I took between college and grad school, I knew that I would then have the opportunity to apply to schools in New York. So that was kind of the transition into my New York ages, as well as on a more emotional side of things. My 20s were really where my anxiety, again, something that I have remembered experience from as long as I can remember, fear, afraid of, bumps in the night that someone was breaking in, afraid that something would happen to my parents in particular. In my 20s was when that anxiety that was always just kind of like a low hum, always there beneath the surface, really started to manifest in panic attacks. And so I remember at least the early part of my 20s emotionally living in New York City was very difficult because I felt very alone, and I was having a lot of panic attacks at the time. So I would say that really described that 20 to 30 years of age period.
Thank you for sharing. They say if your physical body is already suffering that much, it means your mental body and your emotional body, they're extremely exhausted and wounded. At age 24, the energy of 3 transitioning into energy of 9, which it was 2006, a stepping into a new life, coming into visibility. What was happening by that time?
So by the time I was 24, I was probably a couple years into my psychology program. So again, similar though type of scenario. I was living in New York City, finally in pursuit of the degree that would get me the career that I wanted. I was likely in a relationship. By that point, I was settled into New York. So I'd started to develop a friend group that I was feeling comfortable with, meaning I had plans and, things to do all of the time. with them. And again, I would say it was probably a lot of the same. My body was very overwhelmed. I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of overwhelming sensations, especially when I was having the panic attacks, a lot of racing thoughts in my mind. And at this point, I was still training to be a psychologist. So my day was very busy, very structured, very scheduled between classes in the mornings, placements to learn how to be a psychologist to the job I had to have on the side to pay for the school. So my life was very scheduled, busy, and exhausting. Exactly as you described it would probably.
New York, it's not for everybody, but when you come there as a visitor and you get the energy of moment, I think it's good partially. Your black moon is in Capricorn, which can speak that person works non-stop, exactly what you mentioned. This your life. Were some periods in your life when you understood your own mission? You're very dedicated and determined to your calling, but you became a slave of that mission. Have you ever felt that way?
For me, it's a daily conversation to make sure that I don't put validation, achievement, outcome before how I feel. Between, do I have energy? Am I excited by what I'm doing? So I would say for me, it's not even a period of life. I have that tendency to put work above all, especially now that I truly feel passionate and purposeful. I have kind of an inner desire to do what I do, not just for the accolades, the degree, the outcome, for the desire to help others on their journey, which means that I get really excited by what I'm doing as well. So for me, it's a continued just awareness that I do have that tendency to run myself ragged with either a stressful to-do list or an exciting to-do list. It doesn't matter because to me, it's just something that needs to be done. And so for me, especially in moments where I'm writing a book, promoting a book, and life can get more scheduled and more busy in an exciting way, include it, I have to make sure that I have the capacity, right? I have the energy, that I'm still excited by what I'm doing, that I'm taking care of myself before I'm just focusing on the outcome or the impact.
And how do you feel actually you can overcome a savior in you and without heal yourself first, without neglecting your own wounds? Because when we healed ourselves, we want to share this energy with the others, and how to balance it, the savior and ability to take care of yourself.
Yeah, and that's a similar, right, kind of daily conversation with myself, with pausing, with determining kind of not only what resources objectively I have available, right? Do I have the time? Do I have the energy? Do I have the desire? But also getting really honest with myself and asking and exploring, if I don't know the answer, like, what is my why? Why am I doing this? Am I doing it because, right, I think that this person needs my help, or I'm afraid that they won't like me if I don't do this? Or, right, am I doing it because I truly want to give, right? Or that this person could take or leave the advice that I'm going to give them, and I'm not going to be debilitated if I don't get the exact validation that I want. So it's very similar to the kind of before scenario of like, why am I pushing myself? But also, yeah, what is the purpose of the decision that I'm making?
You always focus on your inner emotions, to be honest with yourself first. And your sun is in Virgo, that reflects a highly analytical mind and strong work ethic, and the desire to improve both yourself and the world around you. What do you think is the most difficult pattern to overcome, or the most challenging habit that you still have to pay attention to in your own eyes?
So for me, it's the tendency to put something external, whether it's again the accolade, the achievement, the outcome, or someone else, include it before myself. And again, that's a habit that I learned in childhood, right? When we don't feel safe in childhood, the most natural thing that we do is we get very attuned to the cues in our surrounding, which will indicate when and where safety will come, right? So we get, as I shared earlier, we get very attuned to shifts in tone, in mood, in facial expression, right? And so to keep ourselves safe, what a lot of us have learned to do is to overmanage other people. And so I have had that habit for as long as I can remember. And it very much goes along with my kind of analytical mind of the Virgo sun, Because what I have done is the moment, right? If I'm having an experience, an interaction, a relationship with someone else, and for whatever reason, I have an emotion, I'm upset by what they said, by what they did, by what they didn't do, whatever it is. I have this habit that is near instinctual, meaning it's hard to even catch myself doing it. Where the second I am like, I realize that, oh, you upset me, my instinct is to kind of zoom away from the feeling of upset in my body and land more comfortably, as I call it, in the spaceship in my mind, where now I try to analyze my upset, understand my upset, and explain it away, which usually looks like this. Oh, I'm upset. Oh, I'm of the belief that, right, if someone hurt me, it's probably because they were feeling hurt or threatened, right? So usually it's some version of, ouch, I'm hurt, but wait a minute. The person who hurt me is really hurt themselves from their own childhood and they didn't mean it. So I'm going to understand them before I care for my own hurt, because that's the reality, right? While it could be the case, as I believe, hurt people, I have to learn now how to make space for both, which will now look like, ouch, I'm hurt. I understand why you hurt me, right? Because you're reacting from your own trauma, instability, whatever it is. And at the same time, I'm hurt, right? And now I need to tend to my hurt in this way by putting up a boundary, by communicating it, by doing something for myself, as opposed to just worrying about how you feel, if that makes sense.
When people ask me what conscious is, I personally think that's an ability to catch this moment
Yes.
of you separating your dialogue with yourself, not just ping pong reaction with the other person. As you mentioned, people are hurt and they carry their wounds and traumas from childhood, non-stop communicating you either love or friendship or business way. And coming back to your biography, your numerology calls your life path number 8 the number of power, leadership, and large scale realization. You have built a movement with multi-million community. At what moment did you feel that you have gone from a psychologist to someone who leads millions of people?
It still blows my mind that this is the reality that is transpired, is unfolding around me. Because when I went online in, I think it was like 2018, when I first, created the handle, the holistic psychologist, and began to share this new information of, holistic wellness and, mental health and how our body impacts our mind. I never in a million years would have anticipated or imagined. My intention at that time, let me put it this way, was to simply share the information that I was gaining in my own journey after I was feeling at that time very disempowered with the model of what I was taught in school, not only just as a practitioner, at that point, having had a very successful practice, meaning I had clients who would consistently come in week after week for many years that were not necessarily getting better in any way. And I myself was in therapy as well. And I wasn't really feeling the relief that I had imagined and had hoped that the mental health system could provide. So when I went on, my intention was solely, let me begin to share my journey as a person and as a clinician, kind of evolving this model of just the mind to include the body as well. And I would have never imagined that so many people were going to resonate. If I'm honest, there was a very big part of me that was very scared and fearful, not only about what people would think of me beginning to share my own struggles, but what my colleagues in my own industry would think of, being a psychologist that's not only talking about the body and the nervous system and nutrition, things that at that point weren't really commonly spoken about in the field. But here I was also a psychologist talking about my own struggles and disappointment in the field and with my own recovery as well. So I am still kind of settling into this amount of eyes, like, and ears listening to what it is that I have to say. But I think it really is, the largeness of the community is really a testament to, I think, the journey that a lot of us are on. Doesn't matter where you're living, a lot of us are coming to these same realizations and are really wanting to have these conversations with other people who are doing the work.
In Ukraine, where I came from, you're not allowed to become a therapist, and study unless you've done 3 years of your personal therapy. And I think it's kind of very resonating so much with your personal journey because you shared your true self and people are drawn to authenticity. So much fake stuff right now out there, especially in social media. So you became a leader without having a desire to become a leader. It's just an energy question. And the energy of your birthday is number 6, the number of care and harmony which you provide for people you love and for everybody who follows you and inspired by you. But the shadow side of this is to wish to please somebody else. And you said that you are working hard on it. And actually, if the same, it's number of partnership. When you're creating the partnership, and I know that you're for long term with the same person, what do you value most of all, or what you have been searching for since your childhood, having your first love experience?
So what I've been searching for in a partner is, again, what I continue to reference is like a feeling, right? Of being known, of being attuned to, of being connected, of being emotionally safe. What I've discovered as well, and that is also very important to me, and probably about in my 20s or 30s, I would have started to say, obviously, I want to feel the connection, but I also find that I'm very inspired by growing in relationships. So, what's really important to me in relationship is to, even you won't, even though I resist it in moments, right, where I like someone who can point out or open my perspective about something, whether it's a topic, right, that they're curious about, they can open my mind to, or even myself, right? Having a partner who can point out or share with me, what they are seeing or how they are experiencing me, my own habits, my own patterns to challenge my growth is really, really incredibly important to me. And I share that because my partner Lolly, who I've now been with for probably about 13 years, in so many ways we are so different, as just who we are as individuals, which on one hand can be incredibly challenging just because of how we move about the world in so many different ways. But on the other hand, it really does provide me such a beautiful, kind of expansive experience where I can learn not to be so rigid, whether it's in kind of like how I live in my home, or I can allow her, because she's very aware herself and able to, and has had many moments where she shared observations with me that at the time I didn't like to hear them, but that have over time allowed me to grow myself.
I think only brave people can get married consciously. I tell you why. Because the marriage is a challenge to evolve together. We have our moods, we have our hormones, we have our jumps, disagreements, upbringing. And when those two things come across together and you have to respect not just your own cycles, but somebody else's, I think it's unbelievable that you can share it together. And marriage as well, it's a spiritual union, not just a physical one here on the earth. People born under the energy of 6 usually gravitate toward partnership. Reflecting to your past in general, do you think it was a life changing moment that you understand that this person taught me self leadership? This person taught me self trust. Have you ever gone through the self analyzing of your past relationship?
Yeah, I mean, to simply answer, I've thought back from my earliest, relationships in my family of origin, my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, and also all of my really kind of core relationships to be, kind of throughout life. And if I'm honest, I don't necessarily think that I land ever on like this one person. I think what has taught me the most are the consistent things that have happened over time, right? So consistently, right, feeling, seeing certain experiences, whether it's patterns that I was repeating in relationships that continue to give me the same outcomes that were not ones that I wanted to continue to repeat, or hearing, right, certain things from other people, or being challenged by certain aspects or traits of a certain type of person. I think we learn more or at least I have learned over life, more in the consistent things that seemingly keep coming up over and over again. Even if I want to look away, it's kind of like I'm continuously met with the same lesson. So those I think are the lessons that have stuck with me, that I don't necessarily look back and say, oh, it was this one person, because more often than not, it wasn't just one person, right? We continue to repeat those habits across people, across relationships, right? So when I've started to hear, not just from romantic partners, but maybe friends and colleagues, certain perceptions or experiences of me, right? When I couldn't just pinpoint and say, oh, well, you're the only person who experiences me like this, so it must be you, right? Then I started to take it more seriously. So for me, it was the consistency of the pattern that has taught me at least the need to pause and then look at what's coming up. And more often than not, I've been able to own the role that I was playing in whatever that pattern was repeating itself.
Do you think when people repeat the same scenario in different type of relationship with different partners or even their friends and family, do you believe that it's life script, like predestined, or is a way our psyche is operating through challenge?
I think it is, again, we are wired to repeat the familiar, from our nervous system's kind of preference for the familiar, to our the beliefs in our mind, right? All of this kind of wires us to want more of the same, even if the same is something that we are pretty sure, right, is causing our suffering, is uncomfortable. Our body and our mind will prefer that before it will want to walk into the unknown and the threat of what could possibly be there. So we will all, I think, kind of gravitate toward the things that we're just the most comfortable with, comfortable meaning familiar with, not necessarily comfortable with.
Want to learn how to love yourself and build up healthy relationships with yourself and others? Download Gemini Miami. It's your one-stop shop for all self-discovery tools with access to the community of like-minded individuals.
Dr. Nicole, I admire the way you speak, not from just psychological, classic psychology point of view, but from spiritual standpoint, out of box of religion or anything else. And you're very conscious about your clients, about your family, about your partnerships. I have a very intimate question for you. You have tattoos. I do so too. Do they have any special meaning for you if you could share?
My tattoos.
Yes, because
Oh,
I've seen on the pictures in your Instagram, they're meaningful and they understand they have a spiritual background. Maybe they're
yeah.
reminders what to do or not to do. I'm passionate about it to say decided to ask.
I appreciate you asking. Yeah, I think probably every one of my now many, I don't even know what the final number is that I currently, not final, maybe there will be more. But what the tattoos I currently have, all of them are symbolic, so to speak, in different ways. Usually they signify either a season, something that I was going through at that time in life. Some of them are kind of to commemorate. I have a couple tribute tattoos. I had a dog that I lost a couple years ago. So one of my ones on my arm is for him. I have my soul cat that I just lost last February. So one is for her on there. I have little reminders on my wrist. I have in Latin, it says memento vivere. It means remember to live. Up my arm, I have the chakras. This was around the period of time, both actually memento vivere. I'm happy I'm bringing that up. This was my 20s. So when I was in that period of time, feeling really hopeless, out of control, living in New York, feeling very lonely, having panic attack after panic attack, I actually read that line in a book. And I remember I was laying in bed and I took Latin in high school. So I thought it was very interesting. And I Googled really quickly what this phrase meant. And I never heard it, this particular phrase said this way, but the phrase is remember to live. And at that point, I barely felt like I was living at all. I felt like I was just getting by, right? Just going through the motions. Like I described, New York was just put one foot in front of the other onto the next thing that you have to do, and next box you have to check and keep yourself busy. So for me, that phrase was a hopeful belief that I could create the opportunity to live in my future. So that's where that very meaningful now tattoo came. I put it on my wrist so that I would always see it. And then probably about some odd years later, I got the chakra tattoo, and that really began to symbolize my movement into this more holistic model. I discovered the body, chakras, like all of this emotional world and needs that were creating this life that I was struggling to live or feel like I was living. So, and I could probably go on and on with all the different symbolisms of the different ink I have all over. But yeah, each of them carry a little bit of a token whether it's kind of an actual word of inspiration or a reminder, or whether it's a kind of more emotional type tribute.
One of my tattoos is in Latin as well, Agusum Quisum. When my parents saw it, they said, "Oh my God, what are you trying to say? Like, we are who we are. Are you trying to say that you can be anything you want and you don't care about the opinions of your parents?" I said, "Not really, but I respect you guys, but that's what I feel." And sure. And do you believe in angelic numbers that are happening in your life on repeat? Do you see any of those?
I see them all the time. I believe very much in them. I was trying
What
to see
is
if I
your
have
number?
everyone's in my vision right now. Not yet.
Do you have any special number for you?
No, for me, it's just any of the repetition is something that I always just kind of note and log and pause. And, more often than not, I happen to see those numbers in a moment, right, where I'm thinking. So I take those as kind of little nudges from the universe, right? I'm thinking, saying, feeling something in an exact moment where I catch my eye, right, that I see that number, and I take it as a little nod of resonance or affirmation whenever it is that I see it. But for me, it's not necessarily a particular number in sequence. It's kind of any of those more kind of what we commonly know as angel numbers.
They say in numerology, whatever makes 9 in total is a life-changing moment, and you have this cycle around 36 years old, which actually starts from 24, but 36 is a cherry in the cake. Is anything specific happened by that time for you?
I think that the symbolism of then was this, right? 2018 was when, well, prior my kind of descent into hopelessness, helplessness.
Yeah.
Why am I so, why am I suffering? Why are my clients suffering? Led me to kind of a behind the scenes journey of learning, of healing. And then, right, I came out, so to speak, as the holistic psychologist as 2018. So that's really kind of the beginning of me starting to share my story, be a little more visible in this way, and then all of the challenges, but also all of the growth and healing that has come alongside with this more public aspect of my life.
I know I would sound like a person who's librarian, but of course I read so much on you besides doing my numerological research. You have 4 books so far. And if you don't mind to share your own message, what you held inside you, what was your primary message while writing them? Because as a book writer, I know myself, when we write, we let it go. And I wanted to ask book by book, if you don't mind, how to do the work. What stood by that book for you?
So for me, that was being approached with the opportunity to write a book, meaning when I was online and I had agents reaching out to me saying, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book? You have so much here. You should share your story and your journey in this holistic model." And what I remembered back to is my dissertation in graduate school, which was the longest thing I'd ever written and probably the most painful thing I'd ever done. So much so that I thought, bag it. I'm not going to get a PhD. This is too hard. I can't do this dissertation, though I did it. So even being presented this opportunity to write a book, there was so much of me that was like, me, a book? I can't do that. No one cares about what I have to say. I'm not a writer. I can't write something that long. What will people a million different things. So emotionally, that book was such a challenging new experience for me to work through all of that. In terms of content, why I worked through all of that challenge was because I was beginning to see very clearly from just the community developing online how many people were just so deeply feeling the same way that I was feeling, frustrated, alone, confused, right, at why insight and awareness wasn't seeming to create change and new actions for themselves. And so that's what How to Do the Work really represented for me, was kind of a foundational piece of work where I, right, came out in a more public way, sharing not only my personal journey, as all of my books really touch on me and my lived experience, because of course I can speak most prolifically from everything that I've experienced myself, but also kind of this new awareness that I was having in terms of the role our body plays in creating our mental and our emotional world. So that book has just a lot wrapped up in it, from being presented the opportunity to write a book to the process of writing a book. But again, that was really kind of the first piece of work that I really wanted to represent the world that I was now moving into, which is this, yes, our mind is powerful, and I will always, kind of profess the power of the mind. It's what brought me into the profession itself. But now I truly believe, as a lot of other professionals in the field believe as well, we have to include the body foundationally in a conversation about creating change or healing.
And what about how to meet yourself and how to be that love that you seek?
So then
What do
how
you
to
relate?
Absolutely. So how to meet yourself then came, I started to think about that's a workbook. So while all of my books, they're narrative, meaning you read them, there's a story, though often there's at the end of every chapter of all the books, a little bit of an exercise that you can do. But for how to meet yourself, I really wanted to put together a comprehensive workbook where readers, could work through exploring and meeting themselves, as the title indicates, in different areas, right? From the body to their emotional self to then their kind of spiritual self, right? Who they are, what their uniqueness is, their purpose, their passion, what lights them up. So that became then how to meet yourself, right? This was happening at the same time that I was evolving the way that I worked, and I was transitioning from individual or families and couples work, as I had been doing historically, into a new kind of community driven model that has now become the Self Healer Circle membership. So I was kind of leaning into, right? I have a lot of people who want to begin to use these tools and these resources. So a workbook really felt like it was a great contribution. Again, giving readers the opportunity to reconnect with, right, their more full self, mind, body, soul. And then how to be the love you seek really came born out of the reality that a lot of us that are on our own individual journeys creating change, we still find ourselves struggling in our relationships. So that book really dug into how we relate to others, how we learn to relate to others, again, in our earliest relationships, and how those habits are what we carry with us into our current relationships. But of course, similar to how to do the work, giving readers the practical tools to be able to create the change that they want so they could quite literally become the love that they're seeking. And then when I got to the end of that road of those 3 books, it was still kind of hanging in my mind, this concept of inner child, and how, as far as I'm concerned, that is foundationally why so many of us are stuck, right? This kind of wired in habit pattern that is created in childhood. So then for me, this 4th book was, I want to deep dive. I want to give readers a new understanding, because I am not the first and I will not be the last person that ever speaks of an inner child, but I wanted to give readers my definition of what our inner child is, right? Not just what's happening in our mind, but again, wired into these reactions in our body. And then, of course, giving readers the roadmap of how to begin to reparent or create the changes that they deserve.
I admire the way you write, because you blend your coaching techniques with very poetic way of delivering your personal story, which makes it such a great connection with your readers. That's why they trust you another time. But you're based in California, in Hollywood land. Have you ever considered to be one day to shoot a movie for self-healing purposes?
That's so funny you say that. I've definitely had people, kind of think about, hypothesize, I wouldn't say necessarily approach with an idea, but it's been a point of possible conversation. No, I wouldn't say that I have ever given any kind of serious consideration or have a personal desire to be represented. For me, my goal with any of the work that I put out, while I'm open, I'm very interested, put it this way, in the way technology will continue to inform the presentation of, kind of learning materials in this way. So my goal is to always create impact, give consumers of whatever it is that I'm going to put out or create next the opportunity to gain awareness of themselves and perhaps tools to create change in their lives or relieve suffering that they're dealing with. So I'm always open to what the future could offer in terms of an opportunity to be impactful in those ways. But I will admit that no, I haven't given any super serious consideration to that type of format just yet.
I know you've probably never had this personal goal to blow up the internet with your presence and become that type of leader, but you're extremely known in social media and you made it all naturally and authentically and organically. Maybe it's a little bit blogging question, but for our listeners, there is any one spiritual or psychological rule how to be yourself in social media?
That's a very, very good question. Because I think, right, a lot of us, let me put it this way, the answer will be the same as in real life. Right? The question, right, how do we learn to be ourselves?
Yeah.
Right. And I think the answer then is, right, first we need the boundaries, the time, the safety, the presence, right, to discover and explore, to simply know who we are. And then we need to feel safe enough to express who we are. So, the answer, there is not one answer, I guess, let me put it that way, right? Because this is, I think, the journey that we're all on as humans, which is, right, who am I? And how do I know? And how do I then express that person? How do I be that person in the world around me? And social media is a social, right, environment, for lack of a better way to describe it, just like our social world. So a lot of the same challenges will be there, and a lot of the same opportunity will also be there. So again, I think the practical conversation then is, or question is right, do I know myself? Do I know who I want to be? And if so, right, am I more successfully able than not to be that person in the world? Or maybe my answer is, I don't know who I am. I'm still learning who I am personally. Why? As I've been describing throughout this entire conversation, because I've not spent much time noticing myself, attuning to myself. Why? Because my attention has been always on someone else, trying to make sense, logic, analyze my way through the world. So admittedly, right, to answer that question, I'm still discovering who it is I want to express to the world, let alone then making sure that I feel safe enough to be who I am, right? Opening myself up to feedback, negative, perception awareness, or whatever it could be. So again, the practical question is, do I know who I am? If I don't, right, can I give myself time and space and pause without judgment to discover who I am? So in terms of social media, do I know what I really want to say? And can I create the safe opportunity to be able to say that?
The only one said, think about social media is people are waking up and they are looking for the likes and outer validation instead of being focused on their inner self. All the rest is wonderful because businesses are growing and social media is powerful nowadays. And if it's true that you had to overcome a fear of camera to reach that success.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah, that fear of being seen. When I said like going online, right, I saw this space of like, wow, people are beginning to share their life, their experiences, right? Social media could be a great way to deliver information to people. It's how we can connect with people around the world. So all of that logically sounded really great. Sounded what I wanted to do, right? Here I was coming up with information, or coming to the awareness of information using tools and sessions with clients that were really starting to work. Of course, I wanted to spread the word to other people, yet it did not matter. It did not, like, that desire, right, still was overridden by the fear of what will people think, of how will they react, of will I say the right thing? Will I disappoint someone? Will those colleagues that I was worried about come out of the woodwork and tell me that I'm, out of scope, out of lane, should not be talking about my personal struggles to people on the internet, right? So all of that was very much there, very much present. The camera, right, really represented. I mean, as long as I can remember, I hated pictures. I was not someone who was in front of video cameras whenever they were created sometime in my early childhood, or cameras. Like, it wasn't something that I was ever into. And the second I would put up, and it was so wild because I'd have a full conversation with Lolly, my partner, who was at the beginning of this. She saw how social media was a beautiful place where we could begin to share this beautiful, life-changing information. So she was really supporting and inspiring me to do that. I would start to talk about a subject, and we'd be having coffee, and I'd be so passionate about it. And she'd be like, wow, this is such a great piece of information. You should film this later and share it with your community. Because by this point, I had the handle Holistic Psychologist. I started to put up memes, but it was never me. And so I was getting clear, like, my community probably would want to see who the face is right behind this handle, that who is this person, Dr. Nicole? And the second, so I'd be like, okay, I was open for it. Yeah, sure, I'll do a video, no problem. I was watching other people do videos. I should be able to do this, no problem. I just said this. It didn't matter. It seemed like the second the phone or the camera got put in front of me, my mind would go blank. My heart would race. I would completely forget or fumble over everything that I just said so eloquently 10 minutes before. It did not matter how much Lolly had a smile on her face, was, saying what I'm sure many other people have probably tried to be on camera have heard. Just pretend like it's not there. Just act like you're talking to me, right? Just look. And she's much bigger than the tiny camera at this point. it didn't matter because my mind already played that tape forward. Oh, I'm being recorded. Oh, so now people are going to listen and see me and then hear what I'm saying and then judge me, how I look, how I said it, what my accent sounds like, right? And a million other things. So in that moment, my mind had already gone to this terrible negative feedback that I'm going to get. My body was in a complete stress reaction as a result, because who wants to be rejected when you're sharing something that's important to you? A completely natural reaction. And so my mind goes blank. My heart's racing, but visibly, I'm just seemingly standing there wanting to share information. So the fear of camera, of being publicly visible, it was not until actually my second to the last book, so about 3 years ago, where I had the opportunity to do any public events for a book, because my first book came out during COVID. So I didn't even have the opportunity to say, oh, I want to have a book event or a book signing. And so the first time that I got in front of people where I saw them and I wasn't just on a camera, the fear of public speaking is very real for me. So I share all of this because I know that I imagine people see me, see 9 million, 10 million, whatever the million followers are. And they must imagine that, right, I was born to do this. This is all I've ever wanted to do. I love the camera. And this is the farthest thing from comfortable for me. Granted, it's gotten more comfortable over time, not because I logicked it away, but because I was uncomfortable doing it time and time again. And I said things and I said them wrong and I didn't say them eloquently. And sometimes I got good feedback and sometimes I got that negative feedback that I was very much concerned about getting. And you know what happened? I was still okay. I might have been uncomfortable. I might have been stressed. I might have felt bad about myself. I might have fantasized never going on camera again. But you know what I did? I did it again and again and again and again. And so now, while I still have a bit of discomfort, especially again, if I'm in public, if I see people, if I have to give like a solo talk, the anxiety would absolutely still be there for me. But so is a growing sense of confidence and competence that I can tolerate. Not that I expect not to be uncomfortable now, but that I have taught myself that even if I'm uncomfortable, even if my heart begins to race when the camera goes on, even if there's a moment, and there are moments sometimes where I'm talking to people like you and my mind might go blank and I might forget in a moment what it is that I want to say. I've also taught myself, because I've lived the experience of, just as easily, if I notice that my heart is beginning to race and my muscles are beginning to tense and my mind is starting to go blank, I can start to do some things in the moment. I can start to you don't even have to notice, right? I can notice that my hands are clenched and maybe release them. I can begin to slow my breathing that is starting to quicken. I can maybe even slow my pace of speech, right? And what this is now doing behind the scenes, and no one maybe even has to notice that I've intentionally started to do those things. But what I'm doing on a physiological level is I'm calming my body down. I'm making my thoughts race a little less, or I'm making my mind go blank a little less. And so that's what has changed for me, is I've equipped myself with the belief that even if I'm really uncomfortable, that I will be okay.
I would say that sometimes I can believe that not your gift is your calling, maybe your fear is your calling. Because it's called to help you overcome some things in you and become a better version of yourself. And you actually made me feel so good, because I was worried before this interview in a natural way. And after I remembered that you're the soul who went through such a beautiful way with making it such a big journey to self, and you're definitely the person who understands no matter what. And that actually, that little exercise of self-reflection, understanding who you are, helped me to be more relieved and free talking to you today, which was exceptional, unbelievable heart-to-heart conversation. Sorry, I forgot to compliment your beautiful marriage with Lali, because she stood all way with you before the glory and success. And I admire those unions when partners empower each other as well. Because I think if your partner is standing behind you and your gift, he stands besides you and the God or higher power or higher spirit, you can call it either way. And my final question is age 36. We spoke that it's a huge moment and holistic psychologist actually began and a lot of changes in your life. And you came such a big way from parented daughter with attachment issues and worries and anxiety to a powerful woman leader who helps millions with your own example, with your honesty, with your authenticity. Do you feel right now is a peak of your mission, or it's a greater part of it left for you somewhere there?
Oh, thank you. It's a really great question. And so, um, I think for me, and again, wrapping, I think all of the themes throughout this is the more, you know, present I am, the more space I create in my either if it's my personal relationships or my professional life for those moments of pause, of right, getting curious about what's driving me to make decisions in any given moment, and trying to the best of my ability to make sure that I have the resources to when something is interesting to me or I'm curious about or an impact that I want to make, that I can have the time, the space, the resources, the ability to act on it. So saying all of that to say I and at the same time, let me wrap this in as well, trying not to just do things for the sake of doing them, right? Just do things because I wrote 4 books and now someone wants me to write a fifth, and right, this is desired of me or that is possible, right? I want to make sure that again, when I'm choosing things to do or to create or to pursue, again, I'm doing so because I want to, because I believe it'll make impact. And again, having the resources also then to act on that. So with all of that said, I'm very interested to see where, in the future is bringing. I believe that I'm still have a lot of journey and evolution, both as a person and also as a teacher, so to speak, of someone who wants to continue to have conversations in different formats and impact others on their journeys, and also trying not to focus too much on things that I want to create and not giving myself the opportunity to live in what I've already created, and again, making outcome more important than my lived experience of my life. But if I were to look ahead in like a time machine, I would have the idea that I probably have a few more creations up my sleeve that I'm super excited to put out into the world to hopefully continue to impact. And I'm very curious and interested to continue to see how technology is going to factor into all of this and what might become possible that I can't even imagine is possible right now. And so in 10 years from now, we could be having a completely different conversation where there's so much new possibility that I could not even imagine to, kind of say that, yes, that's in my future right now, but I'm open to it. That's for sure.
Dr. Nicole, I want to thank you so much for our heart to heart conversation, for your openness, for your purity, for your authenticity, but most of all, and not only for your creations, but most of all, I want to thank you for ability to be brave. Because to be honest, it means to be brave and to have power in you to overcome the fear of being judged and not accepted and not appreciated the way you are. And you have it. And you share very openly your personal traumas, your boundaries, your life, your upbringing, your culture, your message, the main message that you share on daily basis with people, started from your traumas up to all your achievements. And I think that what makes people so much drawn to you. Many more creations coming. I believe in divine schedule, and I wish you accomplishments at the right time with the right people at the right moment. Thank you for everything. And as a compliment from my heart, I want to share with you a special access. It comes to you. I will share it with your assistant. I will send to you Gemini and EME app. It's my creation, emotional intelligence platform with 24/7 pocket counselor, 10 more self-discovery features to help people to understand, accept themselves. And I'm very happy to share it with you, 90-day access. And also, thank you everybody, absolutely, who have been listening to us. Thank you for your energy as my guest first. Please share it with your friend. It was a lot of valuable information. Listen to the others. We're healing ourselves and we are recognizing ourselves in the dialects of the other people. So share it with your friend. Would like if you liked it, with comments for us, so we can become a better version of ourselves, a more profitable, resourceful platform for you. Thank you. Learn to love yourself and trust the process. Thank you, Dr. Nicole.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be here. And thank you all for listening.